From the beginning, the arrest and heart attack of George Floyd was fraught with accusations and lies, much of it focused on race and racism in America, and an obsession about what we all saw in a viral Facebook video. We were supposed to see a white police officer kneeling on the neck of a black man, and we weren't supposed to see Alex Kueng. He was the black police officer working beside Derek Chauvin, and he's the officer who actually arrested George Floyd. It was his third shift as a full-fledged police officer, and he would soon spend more than 3 years in prison, even though more than a few prosecutors did not want to prosecute him. But even now, the mainstream media want you to ignore the facts and ignore Alex's story because it refutes the race-based lies they've been telling you all along. Alex and his family are reluctant to talk to the corporate media, and now that he's finally been released, they want to move on without the mainstream media manipulation. What is it that you want people to know about this case?
What's been done is done, and I just hope that at the very least, people in the future can keep an open mind and not let instances like this happen. Just use my case as an example as to, not jump the gun, not knee-jerk, not fall to this race bait, to the social media, to the media, and let them get away with what they do, because if things like this keep happening, no one anywhere is going to have any sense of justice left.
So do you think those police body cam videos were withheld for a reason?
I do. I think that in this instance, they really were either preparing or trying to find any way to maintain the narrative that they've set in place earlier, that this was a racial incident, and they found that the body cameras were to the contrary of that story.
Well, and speaking of that narrative, everyone talks about Officer Derek Chauvin, who is white, being involved in this George Floyd incident for 8 or 9 minutes. But there's you, a black police officer who is with George Floyd for much longer, practically 18 minutes, for that entire amount of time from the moment he was handcuffed until you close the ambulance door. Why do you think that people have been allowed to think that for so long?
That's a good question. Again, I think it just goes to the narrative. I remember that some of the first articles that were published and made privy had the headlines of 4 white officers, despite, like you said, the fact that I am black and that another colleague of mine, Tou Thao, is Asian. So really half the attending officers were in the minority. And I think that was something that they just didn't want to admit, specifically my race, because it goes very counterintuitive to the way the narrative goes. I think we've seen that even with some recent events in other states where you've had black officers initiating some sort of use of force on black criminals, and it doesn't get near the attention or backlash from the public as when it's a white versus black issue.
Alex, why did you plead guilty?
Well, the long story short of that one is that, we kind of lost momentum after losing the federal trial. And the long story of it is that I went back to Hennepin County, in October for that state trial. And at the time, I was fully prepared to go to trial. And my family, after kind of telling them the options we had up ahead after my attorney talked with Matthew Frank at the time, gave me kind of 2 options, essentially kind of proceed with trial, something similar to what Tou had recently just gone through, or to plead guilty. And after talking with my family and my loved ones, they kind of convinced me that, it's better now just to be done with it. There's, state's not going to be any better. Things aren't improving. We had the chance for someone with the power to do so to do the right thing and either look at this differently or change the charges or drop them altogether, and it hasn't happened. So, to risk having more time on my sentence was just not something they wanted. And they had put up with all my selfishness and my desire to kind of just fight this and, hope the system prevailed in the long run here, because I had faith that maybe on appeal we would see some changes. But after speaking with my family and hearing them for the first time kind of voice their opinions, on what they think I should do after letting me be selfish this whole time. That was kind of the nail in the coffin for my decision, and that's when I kind of decided that they were right, and it probably was the best course of action to just take the loss, because we had our chance and nothing's changed so far. It probably won't change in the future.
One of the things that I had said prior was the fact that, I was worried that he was going to be changed in some way. And, I think we can all feel changed in some way by this whole incident for sure. Imagine going to work one day, volunteering to go to work one day, just there to do your job. You're well trained. Things go sideways. And a viral cell phone video was made. And then, goodness sakes, you have a well-scripted narrative put out about the incident, and your whole life changes. The mob, the media, decide what's going to happen to you before you even wake up the next day. And the mob decided that he needed to go away.
How early on were you aware that something, more, perhaps was going on here?
I mean, I was already skeptical just from the beginning, because Black Lives Matter had already established themselves that they don't care about facts. They're just always trying to push their own political narrative and agenda, which is rooted in Marxism, race consciousness. And so I already, when they picked it up, I was like, there's something that just doesn't seem right. But I will say that because of the cell phone camera footage, I was swept up of like, this doesn't look good. But in the pit of my stomach, I just knew that there had to be more. So I always just employ this rule. Let's just wait for some evidence to come out before we start pulling out the pitchforks.
Did we ever see that evidence?
Not until the trial. And then even then, as we come to find out, we didn't even see a majority of the good evidence that would have been exculpatory, at least in my opinion, of being able to prove that Officer Derek Chauvin, or former Officer Derek Chauvin, was not guilty at all of the charges that he was found guilty of.
What do you think of Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, I think they're an awful organization. I think that they truly fundamentally want to change this nation. Like, that was their goal, right? To really incite a Marxist revolution. That's what they wanted to have happen. And they were able to gain so much traction because of incidents such as George Floyd, and incidents going back even further, Michael Brown, and even Trayvon Martin. There was kind of those initial echoes and waves. But they will take any situation that can inflame racial tensions, and they will blow it up to the highest degree. And then they start putting all these other narratives into it, right? Talking about how many black men or women are killed that are unarmed by police officers, and then creating this racial tension. And then even going back all the way to like 1619 Project, and talking about how law enforcement in this country was established with the lie of slave catchers. Like, all of this narrative is meant to build a race consciousness so they can fundamentally change our entire justice system. They want to abolish police. They want to abolish prisons. They do not believe that the current structure that exists should stand. They're radical revolutionaries. That's Black Lives Matter. I knew that from the beginning. What I didn't think would happen is that you would start to see mainstream acceptance by Democrats all across this country, and also by all of the establishment media, which I believe already has a leftist bias. But I didn't think that they would just wholly embrace this beast and this movement, but that's 100% what happened. And I think that it was cemented because of the George Floyd incident.
Last time we spoke, you had some pretty strong words for Governor Tim Walz, Attorney General Keith Ellison, and now former police chief Madera Arredondo, Mayor Jacob Fry. Is there anything you'd want to say to them now?
It is really hard to remain dignified when you think about them or think about what you might want to say to them. I can't maintain my dignity. So I hope that at some point, I wish I could say, let's just say this, I wish I could say I have hope and faith. So I just have solace, I guess, in the fact that, you know, their careers are going to end. You know, the sun will set, and I picture them with their heads hung low, walking into the sunset in their pants with the really saggy crotch. See, the dignity just I can't summon it. You know, the one really disappointing thing for Alex and for myself, coming back to Chief Arredondo, was he saw the character in Alex in the 2 interviews that he sat in on when Alex was in the academy class, and was chosen in that academy class because of his character. And it wasn't, you know, a month prior that Arredondo had an interview in the St. Paul magazine where he touted the new recruits in this class with Alex and Lane and Thomas Lane, and how, you know, he had faith that they were going to be a new generation of officers who knew how to deal with the public. And that if something went wrong, that he was responsible for that because he was there at the time they were chosen. And then a month later, threw them completely under the bus.
Chief Rondo has a book. It says Chief Rondo's decisive and courageous actions led to one of the greatest social justice victories in our time.
I don't know if any one person I have ever met has been more delusioned than that. I mean, you just have to live in the city, in this world, in this country to look around and see what the devastation that happened and the fallout from all of that. How do you tout your own praises? I don't understand how you can be that delusional.
Copy, the precinct is on fire.
Get a citywide tone right now in our loss of the 3rd precinct.
Airing information citywide. The 3rd precinct has been compromised.
I don't know. You know, as a mom, you raise your kids to prepare them for the world. And the world as I knew it. And that world is no longer the same. And so I feel like I've not prepared them enough. If I wanted, you know, I think with Alex and with the boys, it's like if you make a mistake, you know, if something happens, you own it. But never did I feel like I had to say, well, someday you're going to have to accept a really harsh consequence that will take your life and your liberty and change it completely. And you're going to have to accept that consequences, even though you didn't do anything wrong.
And when you also have all of these people in power who you trust them to tell the truth,
Yeah.
tell you that's what happened. That's what they said.
Yeah.
They still say it.
They still say it, and they said it immediately without any evidence, no speaking to any of the officers, no body cam, no justification for it at all. It was just a knee-jerk reaction. I'm really trying to think of this as a celebration, but it's really hard. I mean, the whole thing, and don't get me wrong, you know, the boys and I are so happy to have him home, his brothers. But the whole thing is just a tragedy. You know, Mr. Floyd is dead. Mr. Chauvin and Mr. Thao are still in prison. He's coming back to a city that still has this huge boil of deceit covering it, which you've started to lance and let some of those infectious lies out. But until all of that is exposed and acknowledged, there's just no healing happening. So you wonder how he feels coming back to a city that's still sick in a way. And, you know, at one point I know I said that I was worried that prison would change him. And it's made him stronger. He has a lot of integrity. I admire him so much, and I think the only way he really got through all this was through all the support that's been mustered, the prayers, the thoughts, the cards, the letters that he shared with me, you know, the articles that I was able to share comments on with him. So, you know, he's come out and he's going to be looking for a purpose, a new purpose in life, you know, and it's me who's been changed. And my purpose as a mother I feel like has been taken away from me because I feel like I've failed. You know, you prepare your children for a world where they can survive and know what's coming. And when something like this hits you, I couldn't prepare him for the betrayal that he had. And so what's my purpose going to be now? You know, I think with the help of family, I'm going to find a new purpose, but it's really been hard. Oh my gosh. Hi, sweetheart.
You look good.
And it's been almost 5 years of a young man's life who he needs to totally rebuild. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, but we have faith and hope.